Whilst we wait for the PowerPoint presentation to be put on the screen, I would like to just make a reflection on this roundtable. The title is the Project PASOS towards the universalization of the mobile telecare service. When we said about universal, I think this seems nearly impossible, as impossible as 20 years ago, when a series of people, together with the authorities, decided that, or saw that that elderly people could live longer at home and be more independent and safer. Back then it seemed like something totally crazy, and I'm sure Christina will also probably talk about this. And however, no one nowadays questions the good working order of telecare. As a friend has said, as Julian said, people want to live at home. The elderly, they have more mobility, and we also think that living at home is good for them. Mobility is good for the aging process, and it's for the healthy aging process. But also, many of the elderly want to feel safe at home, and that's when, as well as outside home, and that's when the telecare concept, or the mobile telecare concept, came up. We talked about solving certain obstacles, such as the ones I'm going to mention now, some that we suffered and that we're still trying to overcome, thanks to the PASOS protocol, and some of the obstacles that we've seen from a supplier point of view. There are some impossibles, such as the universalization of our system, that are actually achievable. As Julian said, the mobile telecare service started being given in 2005, even though it was born as a concept for service provision for the elderly, but the initial pilot project also had the participation of women who were victims of gender violence. So circumstances arose in such a manner that the central government decided to give protection to these women, and the mobile telecare service was the first to be used in order to protect these women. Nowadays, this service is divided into halves, and only one of those halves, the one I know, has provided service to over 14,000 women. Some men, but mainly women, that have managed to improve their quality of life and to solve very difficult situations thanks to this service. I can say that there is an average of 3 or 4 women per month that have to face and manage to overcome very, very complex security situations thanks to this mobile telecare service. In this service, we replicate the model of home telecare, so that you know more or less that the telecare alarms that we have at homes are not situations of risk of life. It's just situations, casual situations, or situations that sometimes are situations of solitude, and that's why they use it. However, even with in the case of the women that are victims of gender violence, some of them, what they demand is psychosocial support, because many of them cannot talk to a friend, to a neighbor, or to a family member about being victims of gender violence. And being able to interact through a service that will not demand anything, that will, apart from asking you who you are and what's happened, sometimes they see it as a way to release the pressure, to relieve the pressure in some situations of isolation. But anyway, these are all isolated cases. So what did we decide to combine in this system? Well, we wanted our engineers to make sure that they did not leave out the basics of what home telecare really is. we did not want to reduce the services offered. We know that there are certain team equipment that certain equipments that, for instance, cannot be used with water, so they cannot be used in the shower. But there are certain things such as knowing where the person is, knowing how much battery is left, etc. Certain things that we wanted to make sure that it was going to work everywhere. Also, another aspect that we wanted to include was to make sure that we were not stigmatized, we could say, the people that carried it. So some people, for instance, we knew they didn't want to carry the wristband because it was annoying, or because they didn't want to wear it, even because they felt embarrassed, and we had to encourage them to wear it. But it is normal if to any of us they place as a strange device visible. I remember the first one was a receptor on the belt with a necklace such as this, and then one of the GPS on the other side that was like this big. No one would carry that. It was too big, especially with a service that had to do with gender violence. So it was very important that the device did not stigmatize people. That was very normal. However, we wanted to guarantee that we're going to provide all the services that we also offered with a home telecare service. Another important element is that we wanted it to be a service that was sustainable from an economic point of view. These services cost some money, not just on the communications, but on the care and on the provision of the devices, and so we wanted the cost to be viable. And at the beginning it wasn't. I can assure that the price that we were paying for the equipment in the first 2 or nearly 3 years was 415 euros per terminal, VAT included. A terminal that you will never be able to recover. A terminal that once that it was not necessary to provide the service, because, for instance, let's say that the risk for these women had disappeared, they were never recovered. And so this was an important constraint. And also it was important to have more than one device in order not to be subjected to a single manufacturer that one day may decide that is going to stop producing a specific product, or that has some kind of problems, and suddenly you realize that you cannot provide the service to the people that you need. So this was the first requirements regarding the service provision. Due to in our facilities, we just started to see many manufacturers, many suppliers of different types of devices. There were not enough devices back then, nor even now, that fulfill the minimum requirements that we needed regarding battery life, quality of the signal, possibility to send data, not just voice. There are not many terminals in the market that allow this, and those that started to appear had problems either with the battery life, or they did not always have a GPS signal, or they said, well, we depend on the mobile cells, or we locate them, instead of through GPS, we locate them through the mobile cells. And here I'm gonna put a comma. If we had decided to accept this model, a model based on base cells, a citizen living in Madrid, why would that person have better location coverage than someone who lives in Huelva, in a little village in Huelva? It wouldn't be fair, because, as you know, the mobile cell towers that we find in Madrid are many more than in a rural area in Andalusia, and so the location would be less accurate in the villages. So we decided that was not okay, that was not acceptable. In order for the terminal to be used, it has to have a good GPS, and it has to use both systems, location through the cells, but also through the GPS. Another difficulties that we found is that there were many devices coming from abroad that had not been certified by the European Union authorities, or were not certified by the mobile operators. And many of these, and very few of these devices in the end could actually be used.